Okay, so here's the second part of my second lesson. In this one, we're going to cover some common writing mistakes. Now, I don't really focus too much on grammar issues or punctuation, stuff like that, but I still want to cover it as it's important to always practice. When it comes to grammar punctuation, the way I say it is that you could have the most grammatically correct, awesome paper ever, right? It doesn't have any sentence fragments, doesn't have any of these issues that are listed here, but if it doesn't have a good argument, if it's boring, if it's just, I don't know, like a technical manual, doesn't really matter. Still, it's important to understand why grammar punctuation matters. And think of it this way. If you're trying to set up your ethos, your credibility, right? And you have all of these issues here, a lot of these issues that are listed here, what is that going to do to your ethos? It's going to lower it now, right? A lot of people are not going to want to read through your paper because I'm like, if this guy can't really spell, or if this person or this lady can't use commas correct, how do I know what they're saying is right? And that's the idea, right? You want to make sure to have a strong ethos as possible so people know that you're trustworthy, that you're worth listening to. So it is important to understand some writing mistakes. And of course, if you're working on this, totally fine. If you have issues like these in your paper, like I said, no worries. I will highlight them, fix them, and let you know that this is something that needs to be revised. That's the idea, is that you want to practice this so you get better at it, right? But I wanted to cover some of them. These are, of course, not all grammar or punctuation mistakes, but just the ones I've seen the most in my English 101 classes. So let's get through them. So spelling mistakes is the first one, of course. Honestly, of all of them, the spelling mistakes isn't really too much of a problem anymore because of word processors like Word or Pages, the Microsoft version, and honestly don't really see too much trouble with it other than it being the writer is kind of lazy when it comes to fixing spelling errors. So here I opened up Word, right, and here's our example of spelling mistakes, right? If you read this out loud, it sounds fine, right? Watch your words. Spell check may not see words that are misused because they're spelled right. Sounds okay, but of course, if you read it, if you actually look at it, you'll notice that a lot of this stuff isn't quite correct. Here, of course, is the right version. Watch your words. It's the wrong your. It's the wrong C. That's like ocean, right? Misused. That's not quite the correct way. And then right is not. That's not the right way to spell right for our purposes. But the important thing to notice here is, of course, if I copy this sentence and move it over to Word here, what would Microsoft Word catch? And this is the newest version of Word. At least it's the newest version of Word I got, 2016 or something like that. So it caught your. It understands it's not you are. It's just Y-O-U-R. Great. So according to Word, we're just fine, right? Not quite. And that's what I'm trying to get across from you guys. You need to be careful. You need to reread your sentences. It might make sense to you when you start writing it, but when you revise, and this is why revision is very important, that's why we're going to have 3 drafts of each of your assignments, you should be able to catch this stuff, especially if you read slowly and really read out loud. That's honestly going to be my best advice. Read out loud for a lot of this stuff. You will catch a ton of stuff if you read out loud to yourself. I know it can be a little embarrassing or whatever, so do it by yourself at home or whenever you have a chance, because it really does help. And of course, this is why I also do peer reviews, because a lot of people will be able to find stuff that you just cannot see, and it happens to me too. Sometimes I get help every once in a while. So don't be afraid of that. Don't be embarrassed of that. That's how you get better. Anyway, spelling mistakes. Just don't get lazy with spell check. Don't assume it's always the same. Otherwise, you always get stuff like this. All right, next one. Run-on sentences. So think of it this way. You have a conjunction, right? Like as we have here, for, and, nor, but, or, yet. And that conjunction needs a comma because you actually have 2 separate sentences that you're combining into one. As such, that comma usually goes in to support those 2 sentences. So here I have, my dog barks at the mailman, but she's too lazy to chase him. Think of it this way. let's say we got rid of the but here, capitalize she, put a period there. My dog barks at the mailman. She's too lazy to chase him, right? That would work. But instead, we're trying to combine these two sentences. As such, it requires a comma here. Usually, you can think of the acronym FANBOYS, which stands for for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. The idea is if you see these words, you usually, doesn't mean always, usually these words are being used as a way to connect two sentences. As such, a comma would go there, as this fix here shows. However, be aware that sometimes these coordinate conjunctions are part of the sentence and aren't really conjoining two or connecting two sentences together. They're just part of a single sentence. As such, if that's the case, you wouldn't need a comma, right? This just really takes practice, all right? If you read it aloud to yourself, my dog barks at the mailman, but she's too lazy to chase him. There's a pause there, and that pause requires a comma. Sentence fragments. All right, pretty easy. Basically, you're just kind of missing a subject or something, because what you have is just a start of a sentence or an end of a sentence, but you didn't quite finish it, so we don't know what you are talking about. So here I have the example, an epic all-nighter. Okay, and an epic all-nighter of what? It was an epic all-nighter. I got a lot of studying done, right? Or what a great party. It was an epic all-nighter. Or an epic all-nighter was, we had such a blast at the party, right? Whatever. Or this one, I pulled an epic all-nighter. As you can see, I finished that sentence fragment. Again, if you read this aloud to yourself, you should be able to catch this pretty easily. Just look at this stuff, right? Look at how short this is, and you can kind of see that, oh, maybe I'm missing something. So sentence fragment is something that I notice as well. And honestly, not honestly, I'm sorry. Part of what you have to do this week is work on sentence fragments. So if you go over to week 2, because after this lesson, the second part of the lesson, I want you guys to, oops, not discussions, but go to modules here. I want you to take 2 quizzes, and the quizzes are just over grammar, okay? That's all they are, and one of them is going to be on fragments. So you'll take this quiz and commas quiz, because these are the 2 ones I want to start. There'll be more, and again, they're not going to be over the material per se, only over grammar, punctuation, and that kind of stuff. One thing I wanted to talk about quizzes is that the quizzes you can take up to 3 times. They're only, I'll preview here one just to let you know. Here's the first one that you can take after you're done with this lesson. Basically, this one with the fragment quiz, what you want to do is identify the wrong one, right? So you want to identify the one that is incorrect, not the right ones. There's 3 right ones, 1 wrong one. So pick the wrong one and then go on next. You can take as long as you want. There's 10 questions total. This one's on fragments. Once you're done, if you didn't like your score, you can take it again. You will keep the highest score. So say you took a the quiz first, you got like a 8 out of 10, but you're like, oh no, I can do better, and then you got like a 6 out of 10. It doesn't matter. It'll always take the highest score. And like I said, there's no time limit. But there's about like 40 or 50 questions, so there will be randomized each time, so be aware of that. And you'll get the right answer at the end of the quiz. So that's the fragment quiz. The other quiz will be the commas quiz, and that quiz on week 2 is a little different from the other quiz, in that in this quiz you'll need to find in the other one you need to find the wrong one. In this quiz you have to find the correct sentence, okay? Unlike the other quiz where you got to find the wrong sentence, this one you find the correct sentence. That's the only difference. Also, before each quiz, I have some videos here that I'd like you to watch to kind of help you understand the lessons. They're very short. It's just over commas and such, and it goes into videos here.
2006,
and they're very short little videos here. So watch these real quick. Get to know your commas, and if you need more help, of course, there's also the Purdue OWL, which I'll get into in later, that talk about how to use commas in every kind of situation. Whatever the case, you'll do this and then do the quiz, okay? Anyways, just wanted to get into that because one of the quizzes is going to be on fragments. So let's continue on. Next is no comma after introductory phrase. This, of course, will be one of the things you'll work on in the quiz. But basically, you have a phrase that's being introduced as a sentence or the topic or the subject or whatever, and you don't really have a comma to connect those two sentences or those two thoughts. So here we have, well, a Thanksgiving commercial played on the TV. She was at the library trying to study for her final exams. Where do you think the comma goes? Right there. Oops, this is a little dark. But right here. While a Thanksgiving commercial played on the TV, comma, she was at the library trying to study for her final exams. As you can see, there's a pause there. And that's how you know that a comma needs to go there. Wordiness. Wordiness. I also like to call it fluff. So, the thing about wordiness or fluff is that it's not necessarily incorrect, but it's just a bad way to get people to get interested in your writing, right? If your writing is full of fluff, it's really hard to keep people engaged because you're just saying so much with really saying very little, if that makes any sense. So let's just look at this example here. Jessica ended up having to walk all the way home due to the fact that she missed the last train leaving Central Station. Okay, nothing specifically wrong with the sentence, but it just seems to say there's just too many words to say something simple. So here we have the same sentence, and the red is stuff that you can just remove. It's just unnecessary, right? The blue I added as a way to make sure the sentence made sense. So at the end of the day, what we have is Jessica walked home because she missed the last train. There you go. To the point. No need to add all this unnecessary words to it, right? You just get right into the point, especially due to the fact that's a pet peeve of mine. You don't really need that, okay? Just move on. Of course, this takes practice. I understand, especially if you have like a word count or a page count. But it's one of the things you really want to work at, okay? You want to meet a minimum range of pages without having to fluff it up like this, okay? And yes, that can be challenging, but in the grand scheme of things, it's one of the things you want to practice because it really helps making your writing more engaging, okay? If you ever read something that just bores you, it's because it usually has this stuff going on, right? It just has so many things that are unnecessary. I'm like, you're just like, get to the point already. And that's the idea with wordiness. Comma splicing. Comma splicing. Like it says here, a comma splice occurs when you use a comma to connect two clauses that could be a sentence on their own. Basically, you force these two sentences into one, and then you put a comma and you think that works, but it's not really correct. So here we have, he bought back to school clothes, his mom bought a scarf. That's a comma splice right here. These are two complete sentences. A comma isn't going to cut it. It's not grammatically correct unless you add a conjunction like we have here. And his mom bought a scarf. Perfectly fine. But the comma by itself doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite make sense. But if you make it into a full sentence, he bought back to school clothes, period, capitalize the H, his mom bought a scarf, period. Perfect. That's fine too. Or like it says here, a conjunction. It's up to you how you want to do it, but if you just add a comma, not quite enough. That is a comma splice. Different from a comma misuse. As you can see here, commas really are a thing we focus a lot, or we see a lot of errors. That's why I have a quiz on commas. But here's a different one. This is comma misuse. Kind of thought of as comma splice, but not quite. Comma misuse is just putting commas everywhere. Like you not quite sure where to put them, so you're just like, here's a comma, here's a comma, here's a comma, right? So here we have, my roommate and his brother went to see a movie. Okay, but you see those two commas there, right? So if I read this sentence with those commas there, it would sound like this. My roommate and his brother went to see a movie. Kind of sound like William Shatner there, right? A lot of pauses there. There's no pause there though, right? It's just a single sentence with no commas needed, like this. Adding these commas here are completely unnecessary. In fact, they make the sentence incorrect. And that's another thing you'll see in the quiz as well. Here, you might be confused, but I thought you said you needed to use comma after a coordinated conjunction. Well, that's the thing. These are coordinated conjunctions, meaning they're trying to connect two sentences. Here, in this section, in comma misuse here, This and is part of the sentence. It's not combining anything. It's not combining two sentences here. Well, it is combining something. It's combining these two words, but it's not combining the sentences together. So, for instance, if we just have my roommate here and we got rid of all this, well, that's not a full sentence by itself, is it? And if we just did this, his brother went to see a movie, that's not a full sentence either, right? So this and here doesn't need a comma because it's just part of the sentence. Now, say we had another here. We had something else here that says, but they couldn't whatever. That would need a comma because now you're combining two sentences together. Okay? Again, this just needs practice. It's just something you just get used to. The more you see it, the more you work along with it. Just something to keep in mind. No commas around interrupters. Basically, you have a sentence interrupter, like in this case, unfortunately. However, you forgot to add the commas into them. So the idea is that in this sentence we have, it was unfortunately the end of winter vacation. Okay, but this unfortunately here, that's a sentence interrupter, meaning we need a comma on either side, as shown here, to really do this grammatically correct. Because this word, think of it as kind of inserted itself there, right? Because without it, it was the end of winter vacation, and that would work perfectly fine. However, we want to make sure that we get our point across that unfortunately, bummer, it's the end of winter vacation, right? To do that though, however, we need to make sure to have a comma on both sides. Now, we could have also started this sentence with the word unfortunately, and if that case, we would have had to move this here. So we could have started this way, and we would have left that comma there actually. So it would look something like this, right? And again though, we still need a comma. Unfortunately, comma, it was the end of winter vacation. And likewise, we could have had it at the very end of the sentence. Again though, we still need that comma there. I'm going to capitalize the I here. It was the end of winter vacation, unfortunately, because we want to get that idea across, right? That, it sucks that it's the end of winter vacation. But if it's in the middle of the sentence, like we have here, we need a comma on both sides. All right? That's a sentence interrupter, this word, and that's why you need commas, because there's a pause there. Anyways, on to the next one, squinting modifiers. Think of it as a word or a phrase or a clause that can modify the word before and after it. So here's the easiest way to kind of give this as an example is just to go ahead and just read this here. Students who study rarely get bad grades. Students who study rarely get bad grades. What am I trying to say here? Am I trying to say that students who study are people who get bad grades rarely because they study so much? Or am I trying to say that students who don't study get bad grades? It's a little confusing. It doesn't quite make sense. You need to clarify that a little bit. So students who study rarely, students who rarely study get bad grades. So in this sense, I'm saying if you don't study, you're going to get bad grades, right? Because you study rarely. But in this one, I'm saying students who study get bad grades rarely. In this sense, I'm saying, hey, if you study, you're rarely going to get bad grades. In this case, we clarified what we're trying to say here, because in this sense, in this first sentence here, it could be either this one or this one, but we're not quite sure. This sentence here, though, we know exactly what we're talking about. We're saying, hey, if you rarely study, you're going to get bad grades. And this one, we're saying, hey, if you study, you get bad grades rarely. There's no confusion. In this one, though, we're not sure what you're trying to say. Are you trying to say this or this? You can go either way. And that's the idea with squinting modifiers. You just need to clarify your sentence. You need to add or revise or move things around so your sentence is clear and your point is clear to your reader. Subject-verb agreement, pretty simple. Michael studies at the library every day. What should this be? Michael studies at the library every day. Honestly, this one, again, is not that big of a deal. It's more like you just forget to write the whole word out or forget to use the right subject-verb agreement. The idea is that as you're writing, you may just be typing along and you just kind of phase out what it should look like. Totally fine. That's why revision is important, though, because you catch these small, minor issues. Here's some more common examples, and this is the last thing I'll talk about here. Of course, just something to keep in mind. Your is you are. Your shows possessions. There is they are. There shows possession. There is specific location. Where is we are. That's what the apostrophes are here for. Where is past tense of are. Where is specific location. Its is it is. Its is shows possession. Loose is not fixed in place. Lose is cease to keep. Affect is an action. Effect is a result. Could have is could have. Could of is wrong. Stop using this. So just some more common examples. Basic ones, of course. Just something to be aware of. All right. And with that, I'm going to end that here. This is already getting long enough. I don't want to take these videos to be that long. But that should give you an idea of some of the most common writing mistakes I noticed in English 101. After this lesson, please start to do the 2 quizzes. These will be the first 2. We'll have about maybe 2 or 3 more quizzes after this. And again, they're not to be stressful. Take as much time as you want with this. But go ahead and get on those and see how well you do. All right, and that'll do it for this lesson. See you on the next one.